This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Holy moly, what a day. Hi, everyone. This is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News, and today we're going to be talking about the ousting of, it was going to be three, but there were two lawmakers who were Democrats who were ousted from the supermajority GOP in Tennessee, and people are upset because the person who was ousted was a white woman, and the other two were people of color, so they're like, was this racism? Well, people aren't asking. People were saying that it's racism. When it seems like she was, it was close. It was just by one vote that she did not get ousted as well. So we'll talk about the narrative surrounding that, what happened, and all sorts of things regarding that. Also, we will be talking about Riley Gaines, who's a swimmer who's spoken out about Leah Thomas, William Thomas, who's a trans swimmer who ESPN honored not too long ago on Women's Day, but she went to go speak for I don't know if it was for Turning Point, but one of the organizations. I guess we'll say in the article that I'll read, but and she was just harassed. She was really harassed. I'm not gonna end up playing the video of it because there's a lot of swearing in it, and I don't know how YouTube will feel about that much swearing in it while I'm streaming live, and I do have a censor button, but I'm not good with it. So if you're watching this in its clip, eventually I'll clip that part of the episode out. I'll include it, and it'll be like beep, beep, beep. But they harassed that girl. So things are getting really wild out here, really, really wild out here. So those will be like the focus of what we're talking about today. But before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. If you like what I do here at Black Tea News, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. It costs to stream, it costs to run my website, all that good stuff. So if you can support in that sort of way, help with that overhead and help expand and help us do some other things that we like to do, get some different equipment and other things like that. I ask that you do consider leave a donation on the website. Other than that, if you're watching on Facebook, you can do stars. If you're watching on YouTube, you can do super chats and super thanks and stickers and all that good stuff. So thank you guys for watching, for commenting, for sharing. I know a lot of you out there have been sharing. I do appreciate that. It really does mean a lot. I saw some good numbers from like YouTube and stuff, and we're trekking along pretty well. So again, thank you very much. You can also check out different merch on the website that we got there, like Free Canada. There's so many different stories to talk about. Canada's got some crazy stuff going on. I'm seeing bills, but some stuff that I haven't had the chance to really dive into, so I guess we'll probably cover some of that stuff next week. We got the Constitution is Glorious Liberty document shirt, which I just ordered that myself. It's coming in the mail tomorrow, so I'm very excited. And black tea mugs and all kinds of stuff. So please check out the merch, and if you want to support that way, that's a good way to support as well. And then the upside is that you'll also have some cool merch. So there's that. Also want to give a shout out to Brian Mission Pack. I'm in their studio today. If I say something today that triggers you, they don't care. I don't care. It does not work like that. I'm just using space, and they do a lot of great work. I was at a meeting with the folks yesterday as we were planning to do some really good stuff, raising some money for veterans. And if you live in Michigan, I encourage you guys to look up Brighter Mission Pack. Again, they do fantastic work, and Michigan is a cesspool, and we really want to salvage what we can and save the state. So grateful to be in the studio. I've had a lot of growth while being in the studio, so very appreciative. So I do not have a meme for you guys today. So I just don't have funny for you guys. But we had a lot of laughs this week, so I'll bring the memes next week. But I don't have one for you guys today. We're just gonna dive into it. So there was I don't know how much people know this if they're just not like on the internet, or I don't know how much was on the news because I don't watch like cable news live, I guess. Just kind of get the highlights from other places or listen on the radios, like I get the Sirius radio or whatever. But there was a bit of an insurrection, and I guess this is all where it started. So after the shooting in Nashville, which took the lives of 6 people, 3 of them being children, at a Christian school, which, by the way, we talked yesterday. Maybe I'll just go ahead and play it because, again, our press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, was asked if this was a targeting of Christians because they're Christians, would that be a hate crime? And she's like, that's not our place to say.
Former Vice President Pence said that if the shooter who killed 6 people in that Christian school in Tennessee was motivated by a hatred towards Christians, that the crime should be categorized as a hate crime. I'm wondering what the president thinks of that kind of designation.
It's not for us to decide.
So it's not for them to decide. So on a side note, when I mentioned how different behaviors that Biden had taken before to lay blame and speak out loud, and I went on a rant the other day, but I didn't mention the Buffalo shooter specifically, but that was a case where they were still investigating different things, and she went on her way to say, well, what we can say now is this is a hate crime, and there's no safe harbor for hate, and we need to do things to get hate out of, our land and other things like that. So they don't mind labeling hate crimes as hate crimes, I guess, unless it's committed against Christians, or if it's someone in their protected class that commits them. Because if it was like a white supremacist going to a black church or something, they'd probably, I would assume, be like, that's a hate crime. But maybe some more because of the, being a racist person. But because it was a trans person or a woman who identified as a man, which so many people, too many people, in the grand scheme of things, I'm not going to say it's a lot of people, more than I'm comfortable with, though, really going to bat, trying to respect the shooter and honor their pronouns. I've seen videos of people honoring the victims, and they're like, it wasn't 6 victims, it was 7. I'm like, this person went out of their way to murder kids. So it's very, I was going to say interesting with a bad connotation there, but the word doesn't do it justice. It's just sick. It's just really sick. And so, the Biden White House, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have tweeted today that they're going to, about the situation going on in Tennessee and the ousting of 2 members, two reps. And I'm like, where's your energy about the victims, or at least you won't even call it a hate crime. You won't even call it a hate crime. But when the GOP wants to address the disorder and disruption that went in their chamber, then you're like, oh, you bring that back to memory. Let me find the tweet. Kamala Harris said 6 people, including 3 children, were killed last week in a school shooting in Nashville. How did Republican lawmakers in Tennessee respond? By expelling their colleagues who stood with Tennesseans and said enough is enough. This is undemocratic and dangerous. Is that what happened? Are you leaving out some details? And we can talk about whether it was the right thing for them to do. I think in hindsight, it's probably not. I don't say that I don't personally care. These people were crazy, and they did a crazy thing. It really, really broke decorum. They shouldn't have acted out in the way that they did. But I don't know if expulsion. I don't think it's gonna. If people were they are representatives of people who elected them, and if these people were crazy enough to elect them the first time, they can run again. They'll just be in next time, and then you can't expel them for the same thing. So you're just giving a greater elevation. I'm jumping ahead of myself, but you're giving a greater elevation to these 90 people. So I don't know if that was a good idea in hindsight when we'll look back at it. But Joe Biden had tweeted out 3 kids and 3 officials gunned down in yet another mass shooting. And what are the GOP officials focused on? Punishing lawmakers who joined thousands of peaceful protesters calling for action. It's shocking, undemocratic, and without precedent. And I retweeted that, said you won't even call it a hate crime. But now they're using the victims to be angry at the GOP because they had an issue with their colleagues being super, super, super disruptive. So let's watch a little bit of that footage if you didn't see it. So, yeah, here's more. Holy cow, that was loud. I did not know it was that loud when it played. Holy cow. Sorry about that, but yeah, they were. I remember people sharing these videos on the right and calling it an insurrection. They're like, oh, but the left doesn't. It's just different when Democrats come in or disruptive and stuff. And I saw someone reply under a thread of someone who I followed, and they said, well, how many cops were killed? They say killed and injured during this compared to like January 6th. And I'm just like, how many cops do you think were killed on January 6th? How many do you think? Because the answer is still 0. I know that's not what a lot of people think. I know that's not the narrative that came out at first. But, yeah. But, I mean, people who did violence and other stuff at January 6th, that was a riot. They, arrested. They should have been. But they're like peaceful people who were like arrested. They're people who didn't do anything of like the climbing and hitting with officers or anything like that, who the police went after, bombarded their house with a bunch of people in front of their kids and all kinds of stuff. So a bunch of these people were kids at the Capitol. A lot of, who knows, people could have got extra credit for going there for all I know. And I'm sure a lot of these kids feel like they're really a part of something, and they're riding the wave, and they have the high of their virtue. But people have to come together to make constructive decisions that will actually solve problems. There's that. And you don't make good legislation when people are under duress. You don't. So going in there and trying to force their hands so they can just pass something? Doesn't it matter if it's good legislation? Doesn't that matter? I mean, there's a reason why we're not just a mob of democracy, why we have a constitutional republic, why we debate, why the electoral college exists, why you have the states represented and the populations represented, right? So you don't have one voice of like a large state or something overtaking everyone else, that everyone else has a chance to speak their mind, that it's a process. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's so frustrating. But if you can just pass things and force things through on emotion, that's how you get a lot of garbage. That's how you get a lot of garbage. We spent so much money during COVID. We kept spending money and printing money even when other money wasn't spent because people took advantage of people's fear that was warranted in some spots, but it was definitely pushed in order to keep taking advantage of people. And then it just caused people to be so cruel to one another. I played Gretchen Whitmer, and I did chop this up so you go watch the video on my YouTube of her admitting like, oh, in hindsight, some of our rules didn't make sense, and she's still trying to justify it while saying it didn't make sense. I'm like, ma'am, it always never made sense, but you just did what you did because you could. You did what you did because you could. So this whole I respect peacefully protesting. It's though. I remember when people wanted to go back to work and other things, people on the left were not happy about that stuff. And they painted, people on the right as crazy. There was one picture, one still that just went so viral of this one guy yelling, and it looked like they're maybe yelling at an officer. Now, if you look at the picture, you can tell that he's not. But I don't know how deeply people were observing the picture, but some woman was pushed over or something, so he was yelling at someone else. I believe that's the story, but he wasn't yelling like at the officer, like with him in the face, but just because of how the photo was, that was like the narrative people took everywhere. Like, oh, these people are so disrespectful. I'm like, you guys are framing things a certain way. So those people who are protesting against lockdowns are bad, but then, after George Floyd is like, everyone has to protest because it's too important not to. So people really like to pick and choose when they want to stand up for, everyone's right to peacefully protest, and peacefully protesting is fine, but there is a decorum still that these lawmakers did not follow. So here's them actually like going into the chamber.
No action, no peace! 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 No action, no peace!
Talking about protecting the Second Amendment, but we have not seen bills after bills running in the House about protecting children and children.
Do something!
Instead of providing them resources, we're talking about providing them guns. Instead of stopping the NRA legislation that we know is killing people, we are seeking a civil rights legislation. And now we are demanding enough is enough.
So these clowns, if you offended, go ahead, brought in these protesters while they're actually like having a session, right? With a bullhorn. So yeah, totally not with decorum, totally inappropriate. And he's going to address I'm gonna play videos of him talking about why he felt like he needed to do what he did. Now the Republicans have a supermajority, so the Democrats are outnumbered severely. But and he's to say, well, you guys didn't listen to I don't feel like there's true debate. He's saying we gotta take down the NRA. You gotta do this. So you're very sure about what we should do, but it doesn't sound like you're very certain that you need to listen, that you could be wrong. You hear the kids yelling, do something. Well, what if they do something you don't like? That's why we just need to have constructive conversations, correct? You know? So there's that. But if you're just yelling, do something, enough is enough, yelling your emotions, it's like Anchorman, when Steve Carell's character was just like, loud noises, that's what this is. That's what it is. So people propose bills and they debate them, but the truth is that a lot of people pushing different gun control measures, they won't do things to stop criminals from enacting injustice, but they will infringe upon law-abiding citizens. So here's an article from Post Millennial. Breaking: Tennessee House votes out 2 of 3 Democrats who stormed Capitol in anti-gun protest. So on Thursday, the Tennessee House voted to remove Reps Justin Jones, Gloria Johnson, and Justin Pearson in connection to March 30 protests that led to protesters storming the state capitol. The House successfully expelled Jones and Pearson. The Tennessee House successfully voted in 69 to 29 in favor of expelling Pearson. Earlier in the evening, the House 65 to 30 in favor of expelling Johnson. Though the motion was 1 vote short of passing, the vote came after the House voted 72 and 25 in favor of expelling Rep. Justin Jones. So some of them, they wanted out more than others. According to Reuters, Republicans said that 3 Democrat lawmakers were engaged in disorderly behavior. That was disorderly behavior. It was. And said they did knowingly and intentionally bring disorder and dishonor to the House of Representatives through their individual and collective actions. They did lead the protesters in and have the bullhorns, Gano saw it. The 3 led protesters to the House floor to demand stricter gun laws, using bullhorns to address the House floor. Speaking after the vote, Johnson said, "I really want to thank you for standing with me because I know you care about children, and I hear a lot of talk about caring about children. I continue to hear no one having conversations about things that will prevent gun violence from coming to our doors. There's so many things that we could do that would change the trajectory of where we're headed. More school shootings, more church shootings, more Waffle House shootings, all these theater shootings. It's happening everywhere, folks. There's one common denominator. It's guns. It's the people that have the guns, because we are not doing anything to make sure that people who are not safe don't have guns," she added. It's the people who are unsafe committing acts of violence. And they can do that with guns. They can do that with knives, too. We talked about how the founder of Cash App was stabbed to death in San Francisco. That happened. I saw a TikTok today. I was going to respond to it. And it was a comedian it was like the UK talking to the US, and like, okay, we're going to revoke your status of independence. And the US is like, why? It's like, because you can't get the killing of the kids under control, and they're talking about gun control. Now, someone must have thought it was funny. I didn't think it was funny. There's people in the comments who did, but and I know it's a joke, but it's just like, bro, what are you going to do? Because we got guns. Like, we got the firepower, so how are you going to revoke our independence? So there's that. And it's like, bro, do you know why we have independence? Because you guys were a tyrannical government, and we're, I guess, petty, and we're like, we ain't forget about that. So we got guns. Everybody got guns. You can't just come here and think you're going to do whatever. Well, we got guns, and we're so petty we don't trust our own government. So we're like, no, everybody can go get a gun. You do not infringe. right? It's I know people who use guns for hunting. I know people who use guns for sport. I know people who just have collections, I know people who have them defensively, but and all those reasons are fine and valid, sure. But the reason we have guns is because we remember, we remember what happened. That's why. And also, they have violent crime still in the UK. They have stabbings. They have a big knife problem. And I did not forget that they had an acid problem too, when they're going around throwing acid in people's face. That's pretty wild. Pretty darn wild. And so much more cruel. It's crueler, I think, than someone like in a heated moment doing something. I mean, you're talking about like permanently trying to harm someone. Like, you could kill them, but you want to do permanent damage to their face. Y'all got your own problems. Everybody's got problems, bro, but addressing the House before the vote, Jones said, "We called for you to ban assault weapons." What do you even mean by that? If you ban, when they say assault rifles, they mean scary looking guns. They mean something like an AR-15. They want to get rid of that gun. What happens when you get rid of the AR-15s, the assault rifles, which AR does not stand for assault rifle? What happens when you get rid of those? Are you just going to go after the handguns next? Because mass shootings have been committed with more mass shootings are committed with handguns. They said in this comment, more school shootings, more church shootings, more Waffle House shootings. You think, most crime, if they involve guns, which a lot of gun deaths are suicides, they happen with handguns. So once you can get enough people on this train to get rid of rifles, what's the next step? Would it not be the thing that causes that's most common for harm? The handguns? It's just going to continue to be a trajectory. People just don't stop when they want to infringe upon your rights. People just don't stop. That's not how it is. I was so mad at Ben Shapiro during the COVID situation when it all first started, because he was really like, stay home, do what they say, I'm paraphrasing. I do have an article about it with all the tweets and stuff, so you can go to the website and check it out. But and he was saying, if don't go to church, and he was even saying like in his religion it would be like dishonoring God to go, and every like pastor and rabbi and imam like agrees with that. And I'm like, who? He's virtually, I'm like, that's some cool trust me bro energy. And he was like, those people on they're not gonna like super come. This isn't like gonna be a permanent thing. And the people on the left who are scaring people to make it seem like it's gonna be a permanent thing, just stop that. And I'm like, bruh, people don't just stop when they got power. They don't. They see how far they can push you, and they may give you some of your freedoms and your liberties back a little bit, and they'll recede it, but they'll remember what they could do before, and they'll push it further next time. That's just how it is. That's just how it is. And if people can manipulate you in an emergency, in some kind of crisis, they will just wait to the next one to do more. Whether it's a worse crisis or they'll inflate it so it seems like it's a worse crisis, they can even create a crisis. So it's important in general to just hold on to as many liberties as you can. So these people just screaming, do something, enough is enough. Like, people still need to be able to keep their freedoms and their liberties without just acting emotionally and implementing things that won't make people safer. If you're doing things that will infringe upon the people who are obeying the law, what are you going to do with the people who aren't going to obey the law? Especially if there's people who want soft DAs and soft prosecutors who are not going to put these people in jail and keep them there and throw the freaking book at them. What do? You'll just have the lawless armed and running amok, and we'll all be fish in a barrel. Speaking before the vote, Pearson said this House has not been a place of debate for the Democrats. This House is, I actually have this clip, so I'm going to actually play this quote that he has when he said this thing about the dashikis. So this is Justin Pearson.
I know for a fact this House has not been a place of debate for Democrats. This House has not been a place of debate for people who are transgender. This House has not been a place of debate for people who are LGBTQIA. This House has not been a place of debate for people who are already persecuted in our society. This House ain't even been a place of debate for people who wear beautiful dashikis in honor of their ancestors who made.
Yeah, so there was that quote. Pearson also suggested that Jesus was lynched for supporting the LGBTQ community. So I don't know if I want to play that at this moment because I have a lot of thoughts about that. So I'm going to keep on. Expelled lawmakers are eligible for appointment back to their seats and are eligible to run in special election that would be scheduled under the Tennessee Constitution. Lawmakers cannot be expelled for the same offense twice. So that's the end of that article. So yeah, they expelled the two men, but not the white woman. So people are like racism. But the dudes don't seem remorseful about what they did at all. So I'm going to play an exchange. This is a couple minutes long with a lawmaker who was addressing him, and then he came and responded. So here's the debate. I'm going to play the Black Jesus quote, though, eventually.
I said today, and I haven't said this is a difficult day, I think, for all of us and for all of Tennessee. Like many others that have spoken on both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat, and all of the people that are here today, because they have families, they have jobs, they have homes. We are all on this House floor because this is important. And you would agree with that, I hope, correct?
Representative Pearson.
Of course.
Leader Lamb.
I've struggled when I listen to you speak about what you think about the rest of your colleagues here, because we are colleagues. You ran and were elected by the people of your district. So was I. Why do you feel like when there are hundreds of bills that are being filed, there are hundreds of hours of work being put in by all of these people who have children and grandchildren and constituents who have been killed by violence and, yes, gun violence and others, and yet you stand here and you came to the well of this chamber and silenced 96 other voices. And the stuff you have said, because I respect you, I actually literally respect you. You're a very intelligent individual. You're very zealous. You're very passionate about what you believe in. I am passionate about my constituents as well. I don't want any child anywhere in this state to be in danger. You've heard me say those words, but you don't seem like you believe that any of us care about our constituents as much as you care about yours. Though many people in this body have served their communities for decades, both Republican and Democrat. When you step into the well with a bullhorn and are yelling and screaming and are sharing with the people of this state that you believe that none of us care, and you shut down the ability of even a response, surely you can at least admit that that is an egregious thing to shut out other voices, because only together, with everybody's thoughts at the table, everybody's voice at the table, can we possibly solve the problems that plague our day. Every single voice is important. Yours, mine, everyone's. Does it not matter to you that in doing so, you shut down every other voice and elevated yourself even above the very families who were going through hell because their loved ones were killed? And it appeared to us as if in that broach of protocol, it's not about the rules, It's about that you elevated yourself above the very dead bodies that had not been put in the ground yet. How can you not get that? We all of us, want to make sure that there's no more children killed. Surely you get that, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond. I understand that your voice matters. I would ask that you explain to this body why you feel like ours do not. Because on almost every single bill you've spoken, and I think your questions have been illuminated in certain issues that I might not have thought about because I haven't walked in your shoes and you haven't walked in mine. But those rules are there so that we can have this back and forth instead of people just shouting at each other in which nothing gets resolved. I wanted to share that because I wanted to hear your thoughts on how coming to the House floor with a bullhorn and drowning out the voice of my constituents is helpful in this exchange, because this is the way that I know how to resolve things, to talk about them and share ideas and share our differences in a way that comes to better results. What are your thoughts on that?
Representative Pearson.
Leader Lambert, you're wrong. I don't think that one person's voice is more important than anybody's, especially 96 or so other folks. But what about the thousands of people who were here that Thursday who you never recognized? What about the
Again, I don't think expelling him will do anything but make him a bigger egomaniac. Yes, he gathered people together in the chamber where they were not supposed to be at the time, and he brought in a bullhorn. So yes, he thought he was more important. He thinks he's right. He thinks they're wrong, right? And many people believe that. But you are supposed to respect your colleagues and debate these things, okay? And bringing a bullhorn to silence everyone else because you want your voice, you want to overwhelm them with the people. You want to have a show of power to make them react in the way that you want, to bully them into passing particular legislation, and you're bringing your bullhorn to be disruptive. So, no, he doesn't have respect. So going off on you didn't acknowledge all these other people that I brought with me to bombard you. That's part of the reason the GOP has a supermajority here, and he's going in. He's not remorseful after all this. So maybe you can start to understand why this went down the way that it did.
thousands of people here who your colleagues never made eye contact with or smirked at and gave a thumbs up or laughed at? What about the thousands of people who came here saying, we need to end gun violence and we need you to do something, and they were called insurrectionists by the Speaker of this House? What about the thousands of people who marched the streets of Nashville and came up to this Capitol asking that we do something, but instead of getting just legislation that might protect our schools, we're saying put more guns in schools? I have to tell you, Leader Lambert, I'm shocked that you would say that you care so much about debate at this moment. I am, because I've seen and talked with the young person today who said they came to you, they were talking with you, and there was another representative, Representative Jones, there. And he was trying to speak with you, and you yelled at him, "I've heard enough from you, young man." You said that to another equal member of this body. And so it is hard for me to now listen to you, a person who has yet to put forward legislation that I believe or that I think has had the true input of other members of this House and other members of this body's input that can actually help protect and save our communities. I haven't heard you talk about the red flag gun laws that you're ready to propose. I haven't heard you talk about the gun storage bills that you're ready to propose. I haven't heard you talking about those things or putting resources or money towards our communities that are suffering from gun.
So there have literally been, we talked about this on the show, but someone who's been killed from the police trying to take guns, enacting like red flag situations, which, by the way, if we're saying red flag and, you know, people throwing mental health and stuff, what kind of flags are you willing to acknowledge? You know, what kind of flags, where are we taking this? And how far with... Because people don't like red flag laws because people don't get the proper due process, right? If something is bad enough, I don't know, that it should be triggered on a red flag or something. Isn't it something that people should be taking action that, I don't know, should they be investigated for a crime? Are they in the action of doing that? Are they someone who's mentally not there? What kind of action? What kind of other actions are you taking before that step has been had? So this person who committed this terrible, egregious action, the shooter was depressed, and they have dysphoria, and they went and they decided that they didn't want to live anymore, but instead of just, I don't know, deciding to end their own life, they decided to take out others with them, and had a plan of not just really those people who were killed, but was, I guess, planning to do more damage. So how far into the mental health do you want to, like, when you start talking about red flag laws, I think you get into some really slippery slopes with stuff. So how far does that go? Where do you take it? And but the guns she got were legally obtained, from what I understand, what I know. So a lot of things, and things won't pop up on, if things don't pop up with red flags, what does it do? And if people don't report things, what will happen? The Uvalde person, oh my gosh, so many things were wrong with that person. So many things. So many things. But what about kids? And this wasn't a kid, she was 28 years old. But what about situations where maybe there's kids who are violent, and you have people on the left who don't want anything? Like in California, they didn't want things reported, and the ACLU like applauded a bill that they had to stop like reporting stuff to the police when there's kids acting up in schools, and they don't want that reported because they're like, well, it leads to a school to prison pipeline. It's like, but what about the safety of everyone else? I know you don't want someone's life to be derailed, but you also have to consider when you're in a public setting and there's people whose lives are in danger because you're all collectively together. What about the teachers? What about the students? They're like, oh, no, we can't do that because school to prison pipeline. So you don't want like violent behavior and the police to get involved. It's the do something. Do you want to do something that's actually going to work or be to some kind of constructive goal, or do you just want to feel better? Or do you just want to disarm people just entirely? Because they're like, it's the guns, it's the guns, it's the guns. Guns are inanimate objects. Guns are inanimate objects. It's these people. And what are you going to do with them when they break the law? Are you going to prosecute them to the fullest extent? We'll finish out his video.
On violence, I haven't heard you do those things just yet. And so it is very difficult for me to stand here now for you to think that I am trying to elevate myself above the people who were killed at Covenant, or my own people, like Dr. Yvonne Nelson or Larry Thorne or T.J. Crutcher. It's really difficult for you to look me in the eye and tell me that I'm putting myself above people who have been killed by gun violence, who I know personally and who I don't know personally but advocate for. When in this house, on that day when we returned, instead of putting forward just legislation, we moved on as business as usual. We had only one representative to speak about the shooting at Covenant, and we moved on. So don't tell me, sir, that debate is so important to us when you didn't stand up and tell the speaker, we need to make sure that all members can speak now.
So I think ousting them is going to eventually maybe just bite them in the butt. The options they had, they could have censured them. They could have, I don't know what committees they're on. If they're on committees, kick them off committees. But I know people who have been kicked off committees that, they don't like it when that happens. But expelling them is, a bigger method. And if they weren't going to get reelected, it might be worth it. But I don't think they're not going to get reelected. They have all this momentum. They have all this notoriety now nationwide. So many people are talking about this. You know, I was in my sister's chat, and they were talking like, Christina, did you see this and stuff? So it's, you know, a lot of people were talking about Obama spoke about it, you know, and this GOP bad. They don't respect democracy, blah, blah, blah. I just think it's going to make it worse. Now, let's play this Jesus thing. We just gotta watch it.
The government decided that my Savior Jesus, a man that was innocent of all crimes except fighting for the poor, fighting for the marginalized, fighting for the LGBTQ community, fighting for those who are single mothers, fighting for those who are ostracized, fighting for those pushed to the periphery. My Savior, my black Jesus, he was lynched by the government on Friday. And they thought that all hope had been lost. All the outside it rained and it thundered and everybody said everything was over, and it was some black women who stood at the cross. It was some black women who watched what the government did to that boy named Jesus. They were witnesses, as you have been witnesses to what is happening in the anti-democratic state of Tennessee. They were witnesses to what was going on, and I got to tell you, it got quiet on Saturday. Yes, I tell you, it was a sad day on Saturday. All hope seemed to be lost. Representatives were thrown out of the State House. Democracy seemed to be at its end. Seemed like the NRA and gun lobbyists might win. But that was good news for us. I don't know how long this Saturday in the state of Tennessee might last. But we have good news, folks. We've got good news that Sunday always comes. Resurrection is a promise, and it is a prophecy. It's a prophecy that came out of the cotton fields. It's a prophecy that came out of the lynching tree. It's a prophecy that still lives in each and every one of us in order to make the state of Tennessee the place that it ought to be. And so I still got hope, because I know we are still here, and we will never quit.
Out of order.
So let's talk about this MLK wannabe here. So, okay, first of all, Jesus isn't black. Let's just get that off the table. He's not black. I have an article on my website, blacktnews.com, talking about the color of Jesus' skin, and there's always a lot of conversations about it. And if you care, historically, it's one thing to care about that, but to have so much identity wrapped up into your skin like that, to the point where you warp Jesus into it's just, it seems like you don't get who he was. So go ahead and take the time to read that article. But no, Jesus, you don't have a black Jesus. You just have a Jesus. So there's that. Talking about Jesus stood up for the marginalized, and he stood up for the LGBT, and he stood up for single mothers, and Jesus stood up in love for everyone. God is no respecter of persons, and he's willing to save everyone, died on the cross for everyone, for your sin as an oppressed person, your sin as, and the Daily Wire, they have their Exodus series, and I think the first episode they talked about how Jordan Peterson mentioned, I believe it was Jordan Peterson who had mentioned something along the lines of how oppressing someone oppresses you in a way, how it warps your heart. And so there's this grave injustice being committed against the person that you're oppressing, but also the person who is the oppressor. And it reminded me of Frederick Douglass talking about how as he came to Christ, he realized that everyone is in need of a savior, the slave and the slave master alike. Like everyone has done wrong, you know. So the whole like Jesus stood up against injustice, you know, but he stood up for the truth, and he is the truth. You know, he was against sin, and he was against people mishandling the word, and people who had the law, but people who were not, who forgot the reason for the law, and people who were had no love in their hearts. So it's really more complicated than they're putting out. But when it comes to the subject of Jesus stood up for the LGBT, he stands up for everyone. But whether you're watching, you're triggered or not, like the Bible's pretty clear about, you know, sex. Like man, woman within the confines of marriage. And people say Jesus doesn't address it. Jesus addresses marriage, and he references back to Leviticus. And Jesus, I mean, if you're a Christian, it's likely that you believe in the Trinitarian doctrine anyway, and Jesus in the New Testament is not different than God the Father. You know, they're not in disagreement about the New or the Old Testament. So just using the Bible and scripture and twisting and whatever for political purposes, it's just all off. It's just all off. And but my black Jesus, someone in the comments said if they had known him, I guess they would think he was 80 years old. Definitely, you know, doing kind of like a preachy sort of rhythm with how he speaks. It could just be how he kind of revs up and does this, like, I don't know, preaching sort of tone thing. So I think he's unfortunately, I think he's got a future, bro. Unless there's like some kind of like, I was gonna say, like, unless there's something that could like derail him for like something egregious. But in that case, I don't even know, because people get over whatever if it's their person on their team. So I think they just made a superstar in his district or whatever, because he obviously did get elected, someone who's going to be a national sort of superstar. And even if he doesn't get reelected, which I assume he will probably just easily get reelected in his district, he will probably, I don't know, become like a Colin Kaepernick or something. Just be someone who becomes like a professional sort of race hustler, and, you know, we'll get a lots of limelight and maybe financial backing and all sorts of stuff. So they were disruptive, totally were. But ousting them in the long run, I don't think it's gonna be good for them. Now, I don't think you should just do things because they're the right thing to do. I don't really have a problem with them, like, doing what they did, having like no remorse pretty much about it, and, you know, and then the attitudes that they appear to have regarding their colleagues, there just is no respect there. But they were elected but you do have to weigh that they were elected to represent their constituents. But I guess they're also weighing the fact that all those other people were also elected to represent their constituents, and you are not more important than the other, you know, people in the chamber. And you obviously think you are when you think you have the right to march in protesters who all agree with you, I guess, who don't understand all the issues and whatever, but they're fired up enough to agree with you, and you come in the chamber, you lead them in with a bullhorn because you don't get your way apparently when they have general sessions, or they don't take all your input, or they don't, you know, listen to enough when you debate, or whatever reason that makes you feel like you have to take this step. It's just not the way that you handle things in a constitutional republic. We are not in a democracy where the wolves rule. So I also think, and I mentioned this earlier, the way that everyone is so focused on this story, how it's evolved, like they just want to do something about the gun violence, and but what about the rhetoric surrounding this particular issue? When if someone passes a bill and they're like, hey, I don't think we should, I think it's like medical malpractice to chemically castrate kids, and that's what Lupron is, right? It is what it is. So if people pass legislation like that and they're trying to kill the trans kids, and you have all sorts of other hysterical language, and you have unwell people, and you keep inflaming them, what do you think is going to happen? There was someone who was detained, and I think it was Colorado. I'm not seeing a lot of people talk about it. I'm seeing it float around on Twitter, but someone in Colorado, was a transgender person, was detained, and they had a list of places that they were going to shoot up, and they were all Christian based, I believe, and they were asked, like, well, why did you pick those targets? And they said, no particular reason, which doesn't seem true. It seems pretty obvious. So this inflaming and hysterical nature of the different conversations we're having, they're not helpful. Like, people have conversations about mental health. That's something that Republicans will really bring up. We need to address mental health. And I've been seeing people push back and saying, well, are you going to pay for that? What are you going to do? Blah, 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 et cetera, blah, blah, blah. I don't think just paying for people to go get some therapy, especially if all these therapists are cracks, is what I'm particularly addressing about mental health. I wrote an article on my website expressing how our politics, how we engage in conversation, makes people crazy. And I don't think there's enough adults in the room who want to make it better. And Pearson, who was ejected, he doesn't seem like an adult in the room who wants to make things better. Preaching about black Jesus and no, I think everyone is so driven to get their narrative that people don't want to have honest conversations, and the actual like well-being of the constituents doesn't matter in the long run for their mentality and ideology, and if this country is going to survive at all, right? I'll move on to the Riley Gaines thing in a second, but someone had commented today on a TikTok video of mine where I had posted a pro-life influencer, a male one, who was talking about abortion and how how it causes harm, and it's not natural to rip a baby apart, and which is true. It's not natural. It's not their natural death. It's an induced abortion, not a spontaneous one, which is a miscarriage, but it's an induced, like you're paying money for someone to kill your offspring. That's just what it is. So someone replied, left a comment, and was like, "Oh, so you're saying SA and SA is, sexual assault and I don't know, want to get flagged, but the R word. Are you saying that those are natural?" And so I replied and I said, read what you wrote and think about it, and then explain why you think anyone would agree with what you just said. And she was just like, well, you agree with how these people are conceived or something. I'm just like, no one likes when these situations happen. But the question is, if you're going to kill someone, is that legitimately the best thing for the parties involved? Because there's at least two. There's the mother and the baby. And I at first I responded, I'm like, okay, well, I just don't believe that you discriminate against particular children and then commit violence against them. So there's that. And they're like, well, you're forcing people to give birth. I'm like, specifically explain how. And they said, well, you won't let people have abortions. I'm like, okay. First of all, the original video had nothing to do with rape at all. I know I just said the word, but it had nothing to do with that. It was just a abortion video in general. But people jump to this because, well, people are very passionate about that. It's like less than 1% of abortions, but it's not, and people have really a bodily autonomy argument mostly. So it's kind of coming from an insincere place, but that's where they jump to because maximum emotional sort of damage on the issue, right? It's the most compelling. So regardless of if anything is consensual, it's over 90% of abortions are through some kind of consensual actions. Once a baby has been conceived, it's coming out. I could have nothing to do with it. Absolutely nothing to do with it. If you do nothing, I do nothing, the baby's coming out. That is the natural process. It's going to develop until it's ready to come out. And it's going to come out either alive and be healthy, it's going to come out and tragically pass away. After it's born, it's going to tragically be stillborn, or maybe it'll miscarry, or maybe you need to have some kind of like C-section emergency, whatever. But it's going to pass through you. If you have an abortion, you are introducing force. So me saying don't introduce violence to your offspring isn't me forcing anything. It's not me forcing birth. Abortion is forced birth. So when people use that language, I'm like, that's a really hysterical accusation meant to make me seem like an aggressor. Like the abortion is the act of aggression, and you can support it, but that's the truth of the matter. The intended purpose of it is to end up with a dead baby. But she wanted to be all like, I don't know, infer or imply that people are okay with sexual assault, and I'm like, that is nowhere in the world. There's nowhere in the world, but that's where people jump to because they don't want to actually they say this is a nuanced conversation, but they just want to say whatever and think whatever to make their opponent evil so they can be right and just in what they decide. Maybe it's a little more complicated than that. So that's just an example. And so many people believe so many hysterical things or jump to hysterical things, and you can't talk to folks. And it's just not healthy. We do not have a healthy nation, and no one wants us to be. Nobody wants us to be. Not no one. I mean, that's hysterical. That's an exaggeration, but hyperbole. But there's too many people who just want us to outrage and be upset and not be constructive in the least bit. So anyway, go read the article blacktnews.com, please, about the mental health situation in America and how people aren't helping. We got to tone down the rhetoric. And Joe Biden and all these people who are like, we got to have democracy, and they're shutting down speech, and, you know, it's like you guys are the rudest people, and then them not wanting to say that the shooting that had happened was a hate crime. It's like, but you'll call Republicans, extremists, radical extremists, for like having just normal sort of views, extreme MAGA Republican. Yeah. Okay. We're not in a good place. Hope Black Jesus can save it. Anyway, let's move on to Riley Gaines. Riley Gaines is a swimmer from, she's been one of the people who's been speaking up against Leah Thomas. And you know what? Someone left, people leave quite a few comments. They're like, why do you keep talking about this stuff? And why does it matter? And to me, or it doesn't affect me at all, or whatever. And one, you're living with life with your eyes closed if you think that this stuff isn't affecting a ton of people. I have not made any videos about blanket trans community harping on them and spreading vitriol. That's not, I don't have a video like that. They're addressing ideology, they're addressing policies, they're addressing particular individuals, some of which have threatened women. The woke companies that are spreading an ideology, and it is an ideology, whether it's for like political reasons, whether it's for cash and grab, I don't know, but I do think these things are worth talking about, because how you shape society today will be what society we live in tomorrow, and it does have a extreme effect on everybody. But Riley Gaines, this is someone who has it's personally affected. So I'll go through this story and then I'll explain. Riley Gaines ambushed and physically hit after saving women's sports speech in San Francisco State. Former NCAA swimmer Riley Gaines was barricaded in a room at San Francisco State University Thursday night after she was physically assaulted following a speech to students about saving women's sports at Turning Point USA and Leadership Institute event on the campus. Barker, Riley's husband, said he had brief conversations with her while she was barricaded in the room for nearly 3 hours. That's got to be like horrifying for like a husband to know that their wife is barricaded in a bathroom and they're not with them to protect them, and there's a crazy mob that hates them. That's gotta be awful. She told me she was hit multiple times by a guy in a dress. I was shaking. It made me that mad. It makes me sick to feel so helpless about it, Barker said. She was under police protection and was still hit by a man wearing a dress. On Twitter, Gaines shared footage that she took showing her being rushed out of the venue by police officers amid an onslaught of verbal attacks from the detractors who surrounded her. The prisoners are running the asylum at SFSU. I was ambushed and physically hit twice by a man, Gaines wrote in the tweet. This is proof that women need sex-protected spaces. Still only further assures me that I'm doing something right. When they want to use silent, speak louder. While Gaines spoke to the students, many of whom expressed opposition to her viewpoints, other footage from the event showed the swimmer's remarks being drowned out by a group of pro-trans protesters who had become increasingly loud outside the room. Just scrolling through the rest of it, seeing if there's anything of merit to say in the article. This is Fox. I think I said it was already a Fox News article, but I have the video. I didn't want to play it because there's a lot of curse words in it, like F-bombs and stuff, and when you're streaming live, sometimes YouTube and stuff doesn't like that, so I'll have to, share it and later with the words and stuff bleeped out. But I just didn't have enough time to do enough of that editing before the show started. But they were, yelling profanity at her. She was crowded by the crowd. She did have to be barricaded. And then I saw another video of the protesters like joking, like, "Oh, we'll let her go if she pays us," and like, "How about $10 a piece?" So these little rascals, and that's too nice of a word to say, I think, but the fact that people think that's okay is awful to act that way, especially she's just a woman speaking about her experience, something that's so personal to her. She's an athlete. She's affected by this. She's not a rando who's just offended by it on the internet. This really affected her. So during the whole William Leah Thomas situation, I was frustrated, like, seeing all this continue to happen. And I'm like, I know there's girls who can't like this, and they're watching him compete and get stuff, and I understood that they're afraid to speak up, but there's still like people who are like, "Oh, we support you, but we just don't think it's fair." So there was a letter that was sent out, and Good Morning America interviewed Thomas, and they're like, "Well, what do you think about these women who said, they support you being a woman, but they just don't think it's fair for you to compete?" And I thought, say what you will about Thomas, but I think he had a good point. He said, if you support me as a woman, then why can't I compete then? I've met the standards that the NCAA has set to swim, so what can you say? He's like, either you support me or you don't. And so I think he had a really good point. If you support him as a woman, why can't he compete with you? If he's a woman, Why can't he compete with you? And you say, well, there's a difference with biology. They don't care about the difference with biology. They think that they're a woman. So people say that, and they're trying to throw the cisgender stuff in there, which, I've talked about. I don't like that phrase because it's used as a crowbar to try to pry open what women is, and the trans women are trying to enter in and say that we are also women. That's what the purpose of cisgender is, to continue to blur the lines of getting to a point where they're saying biology doesn't matter. Women, they are defined by their biology, right? That's not all that I am, as a human being. That's not all who I am, but what I am is a woman. What I am is a woman. It's not a mood ring. It's not a vibe. There's nothing inherently virtuous about being a man or a woman. That's just genetics. That's, flip of the coin. You're one or the other. And I'm a woman. There's no shame in being what you are. There's no shame in not being who you're not supposed to be either. Like, you're supposed to be either a man or woman. And I want people who are distressed about that to find peace. I really question the push that they have so aggressively about transitioning being that answer to that distress. I very much question that, especially since there's so many people who self-diagnose and aren't really have the dysphoria. But Riley Gaines did decide to speak up, and Riley Gaines was just harassed for it. She was just harassed. So people who think it's not like impacting people, it is, and it will get worse if people can be bullied like the way that she was bullied. But more people need to stand up and say, knock it off. These people are a minority. These crazy activists, but they have a lot of power in their intimidation when enough people are just don't want to say anything, don't want to do anything, or they're too afraid to. And you know what? I understand people who are too afraid to say something. I get messages from people who appreciate me saying something because they are in a position where they can't. I have friends who are like, I could lose my job if I say something. And I know different careers and stuff people have that I know that to be true. If they speak out. So why wouldn't I do it if I'm in a position where I can? Why wouldn't I do it? And again, I was so frustrated with these girls. I'm like, why won't they just all stand up together? Because they anticipate something like what happened to Riley Gaines. They didn't want to be labeled the bigot for standing up for themselves. Well, I still wish they would have. I still wish that all those girls in solidarity would have been like, you know what, we're not swimming today. Nobody's swimming today. Thomas could swim by himself, but no one's swimming. Event canceled. I wish people would have done something like that and really stood up to him and stood up to the organization, stood up to his coach. It is what it is. It's over. I mean, I don't know how over it is. ESPN just honors for Women's Day. But if this stuff keeps happening, how can we just be silent about it? Especially since other people are waiting for people to be collectively brave about it. So it's not a subject I want to keep talking about and keep focusing on it's not. It's really not. And I know there's clicks to be had and et cetera, blah, blah, blah. It's topical. It's beyond top. It's important still. But things pop up and then you respond to them. Like someone left a comment today or last night, I saw it. And I just posted actually while we were live a short about it. So, because I had said my general thoughts about trans people, and I said, I believe everyone's made in the image of God. Everyone needs, I don't know if I actually said love. I don't think I said love in the video, but kindness. But I said being kind isn't the same as being nice. And I said, I think I said dignity. And they're like, well, how can you believe that when you keep talking about this issue? It has nothing to do with you. It doesn't affect you at all. But again, when I talk about these things, I'm talking about policy. Like Joe Biden threatening his administration doing things to threaten school lunch programs. I'm obviously not a kid in school with school lunch programs, but I was a school lunch kid. So that's really messed up that they're willing to do that. But there's people who threaten women that I've mentioned. There's people who want my speech banned or illegal. So how does that not affect me? But also, I do not believe that love is just an emotion. People would define that way. The world would define it that way. But you guys know I'm a Christian. So love is a commandment, and it's a particular list of actions. And loving your neighbor, by the way, it's not always easy, but it's a commandment, right? You got to kind of train yourself to do it. But love, though, one of those requirements is that it doesn't rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. So, if you don't like what I have to say, and you find it hateful, but it's true, but you find it hateful, that is because you have no concept of true love. You have to reconcile with the truth sooner or later, but I can't surrender it to you because of your feelings. That's not me being kind. I don't even think that's nice. But it's certainly not being kind, and it's certainly not being loving. So I can't do that. Even if it hurts your feelings, you got to reconcile with the truth one day. But I can't surrender it for you. So if you're upset with what I have to say, you can block me. You can just block me. You can just block me. There's other fun things that, Hollywood Reporter put out a report about 50 best movies or favorite movies of the century. And the list was trash, in my opinion. I wanted to talk about that. And I guess I could have. It's my show. I have to save it from some other time. But these are important topics. And these are important things to discuss. And it just is what it is. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me. I know I went long today. Please go to blacktnews.com. Check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. It costs a stream, costs to run my website, and do all that stuff. So if you can support in that way, I ask that you can. Bible says you have not because you ask not. So I'm asking if you can give a gift of $10, $20, etc. Please go ahead and do that. Also check out different merch in the store, like the You Are Not That Special. Also got in a mug. So you guys can get that other stuff as well. So you go to the store, check out the different merch. Also, please pre-order my book, Of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion. It's available on, you can pre-order it right now for ebook, but there will be a paperback version, which, by the way, I know it's got this stupid little thing. Amazon just does that, but yeah, that's the paperback. So excited to get that in the mail. Yeah, but it'll be a good read. So make sure that you pre-order that. And I have other books you guys can check out as well. Most of them are fiction, but that's my nonfiction one. So again, grateful to be in the Brighter Michigan PAC studio. They do great work in the state of Michigan. Looking at just some of the comments. Thank you guys for your compliments. Thank you guys for watching. Someone had asked, do I think that legislation for abortion prevents abortions or prevents back alley abortions? Of course I do. There's already been children born who would have otherwise been aborted. The Washington Post did an article about, and it's so funny because they wrote it as if it was supposed to be like a pro-choice article, but the article's like, she wanted to get an abortion and now she has twins, and she has complex emotions because she still feels like abortion should be legal, but if not for the Texas heartbeat law, then her children wouldn't be alive. So if I don't know how many people are going to do back alley abortion. I mean, there were back alley abortions. People have it in their mind that women are going to back alleys and just giving birth like in the streets or something, or not birth, but well, I guess abortion is first forced birth, but back alley abortions is when they would just go through the back alley of the clinic. That's where that phrase is from. So even there aren't really pro-life groups that advocate for going after the mother. Just the people who provide the abortions. So I don't know how many people are still gonna be like, we're gonna make sure that we do it. You'll have stuff that'll go underground, but just because people will continue to commit crime is not incentive to not enforce laws or create laws, or especially when it's something as fundamental as the right to life. So you can't hold the law hostage or these lives hostage. But from different research, if you enact different policies, and you could kind of see this in real time when Roe v. Wade fell, you saw people saying, oh, I'm going to get a vasectomy. Or women were saying, oh, we're boycotting sex or whatever. So people are more careful when they don't have this sort of out. People say, like, oh, women don't use birth control. They absolutely freaking do use abortion as, like, their backup birth control. They do, which is interesting because only about 50% of women who end up having abortions report that they were actually on birth control. So there's a big chunk of the number of people who just aren't using those sort of methods to not get pregnant. So, yeah, absolutely legislation makes people just more careful. And again, it's worth protecting the life either way. But yes, we're seeing people being born who would have not have otherwise been born. And by the way, the turnaway study that the media talks about a lot, one thing that they don't talk about much is that 96% of women, and their methodologies aren't perfect or whatever, but we're going to go by their study. According to their study, 96% of women who are turned away from abortion don't regret not killing their kid. And a third of those women, because it follows women over 5 years, so a third of those women come to be without regret within the first week of being turned away. So if 1 week being denied abortion and 1 week later, a third of women are like, oh, I'm glad I didn't do that. It really, I think that's one of the most compelling arguments for abortion on demand being just so evil. I know people have complicated feelings about that, but if just 1 week could change a mother's whole perspective about her child, if we just said no, I think that's pretty profound. 96% of women. And who's in that smaller percentage? Like some women who give their kids up for adoption. I think people are too quick to mention adoption. I think people do need to be encouraged to raise their kids. They will, develop those bonds, come to love them, be glad that they didn't kill them. And there's many people who give their children up for adoption who are glad that they did that, gave them their best shot and stuff. But I do think we need to encourage women first, that they are capable of doing that. So, yeah, I absolutely abortion restrictions and stuff will. I mean, people say that more lives will end if we get rid of abortion, and that doesn't make any sense, especially since we're having like 1 million abortions a year. There's no data to suggest that we'll lose like more than 1 million lives if abortion is outlawed. So, yeah, I think legislation obviously does make a difference. Oh, someone said they got a shirt? The Waffle House has found a new host. Not sure what that means. When I think Waffle House, I think of that girl who flipped the chair. That was pretty cool. Okay. Just scrolling through the comments really quick. But Thank you guys, and I will see you on Monday.